I know what you're thinking. Man, I wish Big's story wasn't so short. I wish Big had more levels. Well, dear audience, I hear you. Today we answer the age-old question, is it possible to beat Sonic Adventure using only Big the Cat? Well, the short answer is no, but I still think tackling the game with that mindset was a very interesting endeavor because it allowed me to learn more about how the game works, how different characters work, and most of all, how Big the Cat works. I've actually had this project on the back burner for the better part of 2019 and even recorded the footage back in March, but the reason I never went through with it was because I hadn't realized the footage I captured was at a really low bitrate, and so most of the footage looked like pixelated garbage, dissuading me from ever releasing the video. I know that some of my fellow Minus World buddies have tackled challenges like this, specifically for Mario games, and my pal SwankyBog has even done a couple of videos with the same concept for Adventure 2, and while I was going to approach this in the same way, I realized I was 13 pages into the script and I was only halfway done with Sonic's story. When making more information-driven videos, ones that aren't solely focused on comedy, I tend to get overly verbose and that drags on videos way longer than they need to be. Just check my What I Thought About videos as an example. So I decided that I'd tackle this project a little differently. Instead of scripting out my experiences, I'm going to tell them to you as I watch back the footage so you can get a better understanding of my thought process, as well as to avoid having to add humor into the mix. It might still be a long ride, but hopefully this makes for an entertaining watch as well as easier for me to edit. So without further ado, let's begin. So something of note is that I'm actually using a bunch of mods that I found online. Adventure and Adventure 2 are like really easy to mod, and here you can see that like because they're rendered in real time, Big's model is actually replacing Sonic in a few instances, but not every single one, and I think the reason for that is because the models are rigged differently, so they have like different animations for each character that override the model, but the model is still rigged to the character you're playing as, so sometimes you'll see like their limbs breaking apart and stuff, and that was really a sight to behold, and I don't remember the game. I remember the game crashing a lot during some cutscenes, so I recorded a lot of the early cutscenes. Like for example, right now, right before the fight with Chaos Zero, the game crashed on me. So I figured like, okay, I already went through this the first time. This is like a separate recording thing because I wanted to have better quality, but like I've already gone through this. I don't want to go through it again, so I'm just gonna skip the cutscenes. And I mean, that's going to avoid most of like us seeing Big in certain scenarios, but at the same time, it's like there's nothing super special about seeing Big in these scenarios, so it's not a huge like loss. However, the game crashed on me way more this time around than it did originally. Back when I first recorded this, I think it was only during cutscenes that it crashed on me, and this time, we'll get into it, but it crashed on me way more than just because of cutscenes. So the first thing that we do in Sonic Adventure as Sonic is the fight with Chaos Zero, and in the original already I was like, there's no way, okay, because I'm pretty sure you need the homing attack to fight Chaos. Already it's like we're proving that we can't do this. But I was surprised to find out that Big's height, like his fishing rod is exactly the same height as like Chaos's head. So like if you just hit the action button for like Big to throw his lure, like just tap it, don't like cast the lure, just tap it, and it'll hit Chaos's head. I was surprised that this is entirely possible. Like, it's so easy to do. Something else you'll notice is that you can see, like, CPU and, like, a little, like, sometimes you'll see player 1 or CPU over characters' heads. And that's because the character selection mod actually allows for, I think, 4 people to play at one time. I didn't try that out, but I know it's something you can do. But I don't know why it only happens during cutscenes. I guess it happens during gameplay, too. I wouldn't know. But it happens during cutscenes where sometimes you'll see, like, oh, the character you're playing as is player 1, and then like your partner character is player 2, and then everyone else is a computer player. That's really weird, and I guess I could have turned it off. I didn't really think to do that. But first off, we have Emerald Coast, which is the first Sonic level, and I figured, oh, this is going to be super easy because it's the first level. It's not really demanding of you. It's gonna be fine. But actually, it's completely the opposite. Being the first stage that you go through as Sonic, what I think they try to do is have you go through a lot of level design things that would make you understand how Sonic works, like rolling around, the springs, the number panels. So it's like, what this level really requires of you as Sonic is to go fast. And like, I'm not even joking. Like, here we can see like the first crash of the game. Like, aside from the cutscene one, the first crash of the game. And it's because I hit the B button. Now, in the original footage that I have, I could press the B button no problem. Like, this time around that I recorded, I had to update a lot of the mods. Because, well, updates were present. I guess I didn't have to, but like there were updates when I ran the game again. So I was like, okay, well, yes, install the mod updates, that's fine. But I think that might have messed something up in terms of compatibility, and I'm not sure what the problem is, because whenever I would hit the B button as Big, the game would crash, and I don't know why. So here we're coming across the first difference that Big and Sonic have. Well, Big and most characters. Well, okay, I guess the first one would be the speed. Like, Big is really, really slow, and yeah, he's a thick boy, so like I don't blame him for being that slow. But the first difference, and this was something that really interested me, and you see, I got it on my first try this time around, but I swear it took me like 5 tries to get in the original. Big reacts way differently to springs than everyone else, and I think that it's because his physics are changed. You know how like he goes up ladders a lot quicker than most characters? I think that's because of the size of the model, but also Big's physics. Because when going through a spring, he doesn't get launched as far as other characters do. And I honestly, like, during Big's story, aside from when he's underwater in Ice Cap, I can't remember another time that he actually uses a spring, so that might be why. Also, like, different springs have different properties, but, like, most of the springs that Sonic has, Big will not jump high enough to reach where he's trying to go, so that's why here, you have to go to that little island on the bottom. They put that there just in case you mess up, which, you know, for Big was perfect. And then you can use this other spring to get back onto this, like, little pier. That was sort of complicated to figure out the first time around. But then you come across a loop, which, you know, again, they're trying to teach you how to play the game with Sonic. And Big can go through the loop just fine. It's getting out of the loop that's the problem, because he doesn't... Big also, because he's slow, he doesn't carry a lot of momentum, and much like the classic games, Sonic Adventure is a very momentum-based game. So what I had to do was jump over that little ramp at the end, otherwise he would not clear it, and I would die. I would just die, like, right there. Fortunately, I remembered that from my last playthrough, so I was able to do it. But here we, like, up until now, everything's been possible. But now we come across the one part, like, okay, not the one part, the first part where it's just impossible to do. And again, it has to do with Big's physics. It has to do with, you know, the way that Big works inside the game. We have these, like, booster ramps that I swear, I didn't test it out with every character, but I'm sure Gamma can do it as well. Every character can clear this. Every character can clear this huge gap, except for Big, because Big does not get launched far enough. And there's nothing, there's no way I can go around and, like, just land on the other island. I just have to accept my fate that Big will not clear that ramp. And it is so annoying, because maybe half of Emerald Hill would be possible if I could just clear this stupid ramp. Okay, maybe not most of the level, because here we have another issue. Okay, let's assume that you do clear that ramp as Big. Let's assume that you do get over to the other island. Now we have a slope that's going up. Not only that, not only will he not have enough momentum to go up slopes, but something else that is super strange to me, and it has to do with the booster pads. Very similarly to the spring pads, if you jump on them, they don't boost Big. They don't make him go faster. They actually stop him in his tracks. They kill Big's momentum, and I don't know why that is. Like, it makes no... So not only... You have a slope that you can't go up because you can't go fast enough, and you're like, okay, well, we have booster pads. That's gonna make us go faster. It doesn't. It just stops you in your tracks. Like, it kills your momentum right there. So it's like, add those two together, and you're never making it over there. So, like, that's another thing that makes Emerald Hill impossible as Big. At this point, the game crashed on me again, because I accidentally hit the B button. And something I did in the original footage that I captured was try different things out with different characters, particularly Amy. Amy was a very interesting case for me because her physics are almost like the opposite of Big's. She's not as fast as Sonic. She's like the halfway point in between Sonic and Big in terms of speed. But springs and boost ramps launch her farther. We'll get into it later, but sometimes that is a problem. You will see me, like, go to Amy sometimes. I won't just be doing this with Big, because there are certain parts where I'm just like, okay, I know I can't do this with Big, but what about another character? So after getting past that part, we have a part that's kind of scripted. Like, there are certain parts in Sonic Adventure where you'll go through a loop or you'll go through a scripted segment where you still technically have control, but the designers assume that you were hitting forward on the control stick at all times, so you would most likely not die. But in this case, I don't know what it is here. I have no idea what it is, but there's like an invisible barrier next to that tree on the left that just pushes you out. Like, you can't go on this ramp as Big, and I'm positive there has to be a way. And that's gonna be a theme. That's gonna be a theme that we're gonna be seeing throughout this playthrough, but there has to be a way to get to that loop as Big. I couldn't. Like, I know that there's a way to bypass that barrier. Sonic, most characters can get through it fine because they're smaller, and their hitboxes don't hit that invisible wall, I guess. But I don't know why there's an invisible wall to begin with. And it just pushes Big to the side, and he can never get onto that ramp. And now a part that I spent way too much time on. Originally, I figured, like, okay, this is impossible. You can't do this. I wasted no time the first time I recorded this. But this time, I noticed something really, really interesting. And you know remember how I said that the booster pads kill your momentum as Big? I kinda used that to my advantage this time around. Because during the Orca section, during the part where the killer whale is chasing you, Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles can get through there just fine because they have pretty much the same properties. Amy gets launched too far. Whenever an Orca hits a part of the floor, it sends you flying forward a little bit. With Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles, that's fine. You get sent just enough to keep running. With Amy, she gets sent too far to the point where the Orca rubber bands, that's another thing. A lot of things in this game rubber band, particularly in Tails' story, but I was really interested to see that the Orca rubber bands too. So like, if I'm going a little slow as Big, the Orca will go, not as fast. It'll still catch up to you, but it won't go as fast as if you were Sonic. In which case it'll catch up to you really, really quickly. But like, they break through the floors, and if you're like right next to the broken floor, it pushes you a little forward, making you jump. And with Amy, it makes you jump super far to the point where it rubber bands catches up to you, breaking the floor underneath you before you can step on it again. So it kills you. I don't think you can do that part as Amy either. But with Big, if you position yourself correctly and you run to specific parts, you can actually get to the second half of the bridge, and then you're met with another ramp. And that killed me to forget that there was another ramp there, meaning this part is impossible too, but if there were no ramps, Big could probably outrun the Orca, and that's crazy to me. At this point, I also figured, like, okay, I'm going to die a lot. Like, I learned my lesson from last time. I'm going to die a lot during this. So I activated an infinite lives thing because I figured, like, okay, that's just gonna make it easier. That way I don't have to do the level over and over and over again, and I don't have to go through the game over screen. When we're on this other island where you start to ascend and go into the next area, we meet with the springs, which, as I said earlier, Big has a really hard time with. Vertical movement is not Big's strong point. In this instance, he couldn't reach the other platform with the spring. Once we reach those other two springs, I was surprised to find out that if you do it carefully enough, you can do that part as Big. This is another clear example of momentum that Big sort of doesn't have, because like he can't get, there's no way on Earth that Big is getting to the top hole there so that he can go to the next part of the stage. So instead, you can just reach that little platform right there with the Kiki, but that's about all Big can do. Fortunately, there is a lower path you can take, and so like we use that to continue forward. Big can also jump. I mean, I guess most characters can jump really high in water, so that's not really a problem for Big. This part it actually works really well, just like as a slow pace. Like, okay, well, let's go through this. This part, you will fall off through the loop before you get to the loop. Sorry, you will fall off. But fortunately, you can jump right back on in order to get to the next island, which you can get to just fine. But then we face another issue, which is because in this case, the booster pad sends you it's really close to the next island anyway, so it's not that big a deal. But then we meet another slope and booster pads, and as we know, Big cannot go up those. And right here, we have my biggest, pun not intended, my biggest frustration with this run. And I know I know this is just Emerald Coast. How is it my biggest frustration with this run? And the reason for it is because you have so many options to get to that platform and proceed without having to switch characters to get you to that other part. You have so many options you can use. None of them worked for me. And I implore anybody who wants to, torture themselves the way I did, to let me know if it's possible. If you find a way to get up this platform as Big, please let me know, because I know in my heart of hearts that this is possible. So naturally what you do, like, this is a normal part. This is super easy to do as Sonic. You go down the slope, you go downhill, you meet the booster pads, and then the spring will send you back onto the island. It happens in the span of like 2 seconds. Like, it's that quick. Again, the booster pads kill Big's momentum. So, like, he's not gonna go up that slope and onto the springs. And even then, I'm wondering if the springs are even gonna send him far enough to land on the island or on the platform. And I got so close so many times. So what I was thinking to do was, okay, well, maybe what if I jump at just the right part in the like half pipe, will the momentum push me back and onto the platform? I was trying to do that so many times. I was doing this in the original as well. I spent way too much time on this. And okay, that's not the only way to do it. There's also a spring further beyond the boost pads. And it's so tantalizingly close. Like, Big can just barely not reach that little ledge. And it kills me because I know he should be able to. Like, I know he should be able to reach that, and he can't, and I don't know why he can't. But then I had another thought. I thought, okay, well, what if I throw myself off the ramp onto the platform? Would that be possible? And I'm convinced that that's the way to go. I know that has to be the way to do it. But I couldn't. I couldn't land on that stupid platform, and it was killing me to not be able to do that. Because for all intents and purposes, it looks possible. And I don't know why it's not. Something else I tried was that there's a Kiki right there throwing bombs at you. And I figured, oh, okay, well, what if I jump on the explosion just at the right time for it to throw me onto the platform? And I think that might also work. I'm not sure. Maybe it'll work too, but I never got it to work. Something else I thought might work was jumping on a little palm tree next to me, but as I figured out, it doesn't actually, like, it has collision, but it doesn't have, like, collision that you can stand on. Maybe it does, and I just couldn't find it, but I'm pretty sure it doesn't, because I'm pretty sure that would give me enough height to actually land on that platform. The fact that I tried all these different things just goes to show, like, how possible I truly think this is, and it kills me that I couldn't find a way to do it. Therein lies another problem. Like, even if you do get up there again, as Big, let's assume, the thing you'd have to deal with next are the numbered panels, the ones where you have to jump from panel to panel to get to, like, other platforms. Most characters are not programmed to do that, because only Sonic and Tails have numbered panels in their stages, so they're the only ones that are programmed to actually do that. Interestingly enough, Knuckles and Amy can jump too, but they can only jump to the next panel. Once they reach the next panel, they're stuck there and they can't jump anymore. Gamma can't jump and Big can't jump. So, like, Big doesn't do anything. Gamma gets stuck in his running animation for some reason. I don't really know why that is. But if I'd gotten to the other platform with the spring, I could potentially, using that spring, get to the top. And I tried that, and it still didn't work. Here's something that I found out that was really weird. If you somehow manage to mess up and fall off that spring, there's, like, wind that's propelling you. You won't fall to your death for some reason. There's wind there that'll protect you and save you. Even the last time that I recorded this, I didn't know that. So that's really weird. But here's where we see a difference with Amy, in that Amy gets super launched with these springs. She gets launched really damn far. So there's not really an instance where we can use that to our advantage, per se. But it is interesting to know that these different things affect her differently, too. We're reaching the end of the stage, and trust me, this was way, way faster for you guys than it was for me. I spent almost 2 hours just trying to beat Emerald Coast, because I was so stubborn in trying to figure out if I could get over that part. But this is gonna be, like, the longest stage that we do, because in other parts, I'm not as stubborn, and I realize, like, okay, well, this part is just straight up impossible with Big. I'm not even gonna try. Parts where I think, like, okay, this is possible, I just need to find a way, that's where I sort of get a little bit more obsessive and start to really try to figure out a way to do it. During the last part of Emerald Hill, you reach another loop right before the end, and it's something that I remembered I could do in the original as well. You just have to really time your jump right, because you have to go through this hole in the wall, and with Sonic, you do that naturally. Like, that's just a set piece to look cool. But with Big, it's actually an obstacle. You actually have to jump at the exact time in order to clear that hole, because you also have a ramp there. So, like, you have to land on that hole first, and then land on the next island, and that's pretty much it. So yeah, I'd say like half of this stage, if not most of the stage, is kind of impossible with Big. And I really didn't expect that. I really thought that it would be way easier to do like the first few stages with Big on his own, because, I mean, you're just learning how the game works, but That's kind of the point. You're learning how the game works with Sonic, and Sonic does not have the same moves or the same physics as Big. So a lot of the things that come easy to Sonic are really difficult to do with Big or straight up impossible. Something else that's really funny to note about the cutscenes is that for some reason, even though the model changes, Big's lure is always there. Like you'll see that Sonic is float, and he does this with most characters. Most characters will float so that their center, the center of their model, I guess, will be the same as Big's center of his model, I guess, or that their waistline probably. But his lure doesn't unload, and I don't know why that is. I guess it's a separate object from the model. Something else that was really annoying, and this is one of the most interesting things, and I swear, like, I would not have known this if I didn't try to do the adventure mode with Big. It's bizarre the way that they programmed this game, but it's also really cool in a lot of respects. Things that you do in one character, and you would never see this because you have no way of changing characters mid-game, but every character's story influences the other character's story. So right now, you'll notice that I can't go through this door as Big. I have to switch to Sonic in order for the door to open, and that's because Big can't go to Emerald Coast in his story yet, so there's no reason why the doors would open. At least that's my theory, because if you try it with other characters, the door still doesn't open. And we'll see another example of this later on when we try to go to Ice Cap, but every time that I come through a door, I have to switch to Sonic because it'll only open with Sonic. Sonic is the gatekeeper, he's the keymaster. So we head to the Mystic Ruins for our second boss fight, this time with the Egg Hornet and our first Eggman boss fight. And again, I was really afraid, the first time around, I was really afraid that I wouldn't be able to do this. But then I remembered, like, oh wait, with Tails, you can just roll into him and it still hurts him. So I figured, like, wait, what if I just hit him with the lure? And lo and behold, yep, that Big can take on the Egg Hornet, no problem. It's insane to me that just hitting stuff with your lure works. Like, it's completely possible to do. Okay, so not only does he not have a Windy Valley stage, but even if he did, the stone would not appear because it hasn't appeared in his story yet. So again, I have to switch to Sonic in order for the stone to spawn and then carry it over with Big. But then another really interesting thing happens. When you place the stone down as Big, the level still doesn't open. And again, I'm assuming this has to do with the fact that Big doesn't go to Windy Valley. So I have to go back, make the Wind Stone spawn again, place it as Sonic, and then enter the stage. And Windy Valley is a really interesting level too. The early stages are more possible. This is definitely more a stage that has bottomless pits. But this is something interesting that I noticed, and this is something really, really cool that I learned this time around that I recorded as opposed to the first time I recorded. This doesn't work on all springs, but I can't believe I figured this out. If you hold back on certain springs, you actually get sent further than you would normally. It's either that or holding the jump button, I'm not sure. But Big was actually able to clear this first part, and I don't remember being able to do that on my original recording. That was a huge discovery for me, and I will, keep using that throughout the playthrough. I would also find out that it doesn't work on every single spring, which was disappointing, but that's a cool thing to learn. It's like springs behave differently depending on what you do, the controls that you give it. Next up, we have a part that is, unfortunately, it makes Windy Valley impossible, and it's the wind paths. So when you're running as Sonic, you go through that no problem because you have the speed. Tails same, Knuckles same, Amy same. Big can go on the wind trail, except there are a lot of twists and turns on it. So when you're trying to go up, Big will come to a halt and fall. And this is something you probably wouldn't normally see as Sonic because, you're just going forward, you're going through the motions, and you're going to go through it normally. Big can't do this because he just does, no matter what, he will not have the speed. But it's impressive how much leg room they give you. Like you can be going pretty slow on that wind trail and still not fall off. Like you'll only fall off if you stop. Unfortunately, that slope stops Big in his tracks. What I was trying to also do in this part was reach that platform on the side and maybe sequence break. But then I tried it with Sonic just to see if it was possible, and there's an invisible wall there, so it's absolutely not, and that's really disheartening because I think that I would probably be able to make that jump as Big. You keep going through the stage, and it's actually not the worst until you get to the tornado, in which something really weird happens because Big gets sucked up by the tornado. Every character gets sucked up by the tornado, but I guess like Big's physics actually do make him fat, or like they make him heavy, because instead of just spinning in the tornado, he actually gets sucked down. And I thought like, okay, well, I actually made it into the tornado. That's fine. Like, I guess that's just a weird thing that happens. But no, I made it to inside the tornado, but I still died. So like I still hit the death plane, but I hit the inside of the tornado as well. I didn't even know you could die in the tornado. Like, I don't know why they would program that. The inside of the tornado is also impossible because there are a lot of springs that try to send you, like, really high. And Big just, even if I hold back on those, I still can't do it. I tried it with Amy. She gets sent really high, but then I can't do it with Amy because of the numbered panels. And again, we reach another part with springs. So again, this is really a part that was catered specifically to Sonic, but I'm sure Tails and Knuckles would be able to do it too. Except Knuckles wouldn't be able to do the numbered panels, only Tails would. So I guess only Sonic and Tails can do this beginning to end. And now comes one of the most interesting parts of Windy Valley. For the most part, you'll be running on this this bottomless pit trail. And, you know, Big can clear that just fine, no problem. As long as, you know, you keep moving, because there are very few times that a slope will go up, so that there's no problem there. And as long as you don't, like, launch yourself over the edge, you'll be fine. Here's where I realized that Big can actually use rockets as well. He doesn't really have an animation for it. And going through certain loops, because they're scripted, they're automated, Big can get through them just fine. So, like, he doesn't need speed to go through those because the game will do it for him. If more parts had that, it would be definitely more possible to do more stages with Big. But then we reach another wind trail, and as we know, I mean, Big would be able to do them if they didn't go up, but because it does, like, we have to take that L and just do it with another character. We reach this little island over here. Big can sort of get through it. Kinda. There are actually different ways of getting to the top spring. One involves a wind path, which Big can't do, but the other involves, like, going around, and there is, like, a way to get to the middle spring, and it's honestly a path I've never taken before, so I didn't even know it was here. But unfortunately, that includes a spring that is supposed to send us really high, and while we didn't die, he still can't reach the other spring, so he just keeps landing on the island over and over again. So I wanted to do this with Amy. I want to see how far it would launch us with Amy, and it launches us pretty far, to the point where I'm pretty sure Amy can't clear that on her own, just because it sends her so ridiculously far that she will die every time. So we're going downhill. Again, we have an automated loop that Big can get through no problem. Then we reach the going down part, which, you know, you can just jump over the edge and you can do just fine. You can actually do that faster than Sonic can. But our greatest enemy in Windy Valley meets us again, which is a wind trail, and it stops us. And that's the only thing we need to get past in order to get to the next island that has the emerald on it. And I'm positive, like, I spent a little bit of time on this, not as much as I did on Emerald Coast, but I'm positive that there's a way to avoid the death plane and land on that island from a high point. I don't know where you need to jump off from, because, like, the level wasn't loading in until I approached it, but there has to be a point in the segment where you can jump off the edge and land on that island. It just requires extreme luck, knowing where the death planes are, and I'm sure you can do this. I just don't know where the death planes are and where I have to jump off. Like, that's the biggest issue I have with this. Windy Valley was not that bad. It's mostly possible, except for the few instances here and there where you die. Again, I think the tornado was the most interesting part because, like, despite the fact that you do die, you still get loaded into the tornado, and Big can't do the tornado basically at all. So there are a few things here and there that will cause you to not be able to do it, but it's way more doable than Emerald Coast, I'd say. So having done that, we have to go get Sonic's Lightspeed Dash, which is in the sewer, and something actually really interesting happens here too. We can sequence break. Big can't reach that top platform in order to go get Sonic's Lightspeed Dash, but because of the way he goes into Twinkle Park, you actually can go forward into Twinkle Park. And Twinkle Park is actually one of the more fun stages to do as Big, except for this opening part. This opening part is a torture because, like I said, using the action button, so like using the lure as Big in stages, for some reason crashes the game. Again, I think this is a compatibility issue. I don't know why it does this, but it will work if you're close enough to hit something. That's why I've been able to beat the bosses. I get close enough to them and I hit them with the rod, but here I have to hit one of the driving monkeys in order to take one of their cars and be able to do Twinkle Circuit. But if I miss, the game's gonna crash and I have to go all the way back into the sewer, go all the way back into Twinkle Park. So I have to do it really carefully, and it is not easy to do because there's a bunch of them and they keep hitting you and I keep dying, and if I miss I crash. So like this opening part, it's definitely doable, and it's a lot less annoying when the game doesn't crash. Other than that, like that's, I think, the biggest problem Twinkle Park has. Every character can go into Twinkle Circuit, so the go-karting part was not hard at all. Like, they all have the same physics as far as I'm aware. You can get through this part with any character just fine. Like, I went through it with Big, and there were no issues whatsoever, so that's totally doable. One thing that's weird is that once Big reaches the roller coaster, he just sits there. Like, the game doesn't freeze. The roller coaster just doesn't move. So like I have to switch to Sonic for like a second in order to get the roller coaster to move. But then once I switch back to Big, it's still moving. So I don't know why the game just decides like, you're not Sonic, I can't move. I don't really count that because it's like otherwise like nothing changes. Like I feel like you can still get through that part as Big just fine, so let's not count that. Something else that's really interesting is the bowling part of the stage, because like with Sonic, you're in your ball, you're doing your speed dash, and you're treated as a bowling ball, and you hit these pins, but you're going so fast that you don't really have any control. Big doesn't have a ball animation in this game, so he just stands there, and once you launch, you just go regular Big speed, so you can get a perfect strike every time and just get a ton of rings. So like I found that really, really funny. Like here's a moment that I remember I couldn't do in the original. When I recorded this originally, I couldn't get over this ledge. It was just sending Big not far enough to be able to reach that. But using the tip that I learned in Windy Valley, which is holding back on the control stick, it actually sent Big far enough into the air that I was able to cross it, and I was super happy. I was like, no way is that, like, something I struggled with for minutes in my original recording, I did on my first try this time around. That was really cool. But unfortunately, here's the one part that I do think, like, maybe there's another way to get over this, I don't know, but this is the part that sort of makes Twinkle Park impossible, and it's because we have another set of dash pads with a slope that Big just can't get over because of his momentum being killed, and also because he's just super slow. There has to be a way to do that. Fortunately, this next part has a shortcut and a long way to go around. Big can't really take the shortcut because, I mean, he probably can. I didn't really get the chance to figure it out, but his jump is also not as long as a lot of other characters, especially because Tails can fly, Sonic has the homing attack, Amy can do the spring thing with her hammer, Knuckles can glide, Gamma can glide as well. Big doesn't really have that, he just has a normal jump. He can probably take the shortcut, but it would be a lot more difficult to do with him. So I ended up taking the long way around, which, you know, honestly is a lot safer to do. And he can actually get through it pretty much just fine, you know, barring a few, like, enemies that'll hit you here and there. But if you're careful, you can get through that just fine. And aside from that one slope, and using the tips that I learned from Windy Valley with the springs, Twinkle Park is like totally doable, except for the roller coaster part and except for that one slope. It's totally possible to do. He can get through it just fine. And another thing that changes when you play as Big, instead of capsules like Sonic and Tails get, the capsule is replaced with Froggy, which I think is really funny. Because like, yeah, that honestly makes sense. And honestly, that's a good thing because I don't think Big would be able to jump on top of the capsule. I think it's too tall for him to jump on. So it's good that it changes to Froggy. In any case, I figure that at this point, I'm kinda soft blocked because the door won't open for me as Big anymore for some reason. I remember distinctly being able to get through this part in my original playthrough. I don't know how it happened. In this case, I had to switch to Call, who you can technically also play as Call in this, but she doesn't really have any abilities other than like being able to phase through walls and reposition yourself. So that's kind of how I got out of that, but I mean, that was a sequence break anyway, so it's not really fair. But we go get the Lightspeed shoes of Sonic so that we can go into the next stage, which is Casinopolis. And Casinopolis is a really fascinating stage because it's entirely doable except for the ending. because you can go into it. You can't hit the button to open Casinopolis with Big, by the way. You do have to do that with Sonic, unfortunately. But once you're inside, Big can still go into the pinball tables. Except, remember how I mentioned that Big doesn't have a ball rolling animation in this game? That comes into play with the pinball part, because you can move, you can like stand on the pinball part, and really easily, if you stand in this one position and you like bump into like a certain part of it, you keep getting rings. And it's like the Big is like the easiest character to do this with. Because you can just abuse the system. And like when you jump, the flippers hit, and you can actually jump into like the other sections that Sonic would normally go through with Big. But in order to lose your balls and get in order to like lose balls and get it back to the regular stage, you actually have to go into the death plane of the balls, because Big won't roll down there normally. And then you can get these rings easily and go into that one part where you have to like deposit the rings. But unfortunately, it has a cap, and I don't remember I think the cap is like 400 rings or something, and the mountain of rings won't go any higher than that. So when you go there as Big, you can't leap onto the part where the emerald is. Big's jump is not high enough to get there, so you do have to switch to another character. But otherwise, it's totally possible to do with Big. So normally the animation that would show you getting the Ice Stone doesn't really play out, because that's not where Big's Ice Stone spawns. His spawns right behind the Twinkle Park elevator. And even if it did spawn there, it still wouldn't spawn, because we wouldn't have it in Big's story yet. And I know that I've been skipping cutscenes, but this was another really interesting one, and I don't know why this happens. I'm guessing it's also because of the character selection mod, but we have two tails. One that's controlled by player 2, another that's controlled by player 3. I didn't have any other controllers plugged in, so I don't know why this was happening. It was really weird. And also, this is like a speedrun strat, and this didn't happen during my last playthrough. Big dies in the middle of the cutscene because Eggman runs into him, and that skips the cutscene. I don't know why that happened. But the next cutscene starts to play. I don't get it. I don't know. So you have to take the Ice Stone to the Mystic Ruins as Sonic, because if you change characters halfway through, Big will spawn into the Mystic Ruins, but he won't be holding the Ice Stone, so you have to go there as Sonic. And another thing is, this is another point where like the door thing kind of happens, but on a larger scale. When you're in that part with the Ice Stone as Big, the side of the mountain doesn't collapse. It's still there. But when you switch to Sonic, it will collapse. That's where I kind of realized, okay, well, it has to do with where other characters are in the story then. So you open up Ice Cap with Big, and Ice Cap is another level that Big has, and this one's really interesting too, because I think it's mostly doable. There are parts here and there that you just really can't do, just because Big is unable to. Like, holding onto the icicles, that's something Big just straight up can't do, and maybe Sonic's the only character that can. Maybe Tails can do it too. I'm not sure. That's like the first wrench in the design of it. But that's about the only thing Big can't do in this stage, because he can take the rocket just fine. He can go into this next section just fine and like climb to the top almost entirely by himself. Or actually, no, pretty much by himself, especially using what I know now with the springs. You just have to keep jumping around and around and around. Except for this part. This part you do need to switch to Sonic because of the icicle thing. But that's just like a one-time thing, because like you don't need to be fast in order to get through this breaking snow path. You don't actually have to go fast. You just have to clear it. With Sonic, you're going so fast that you'll never notice it. But there is like collision problems with that part. So like Big will constantly be stopping because he keeps running into the invisible collision with the ice blocks. So you just have to keep jumping over it until you clear it. And then of course you reach another part with numbered panels, which Big can't get through. So we have to do that with Sonic. And now we're approaching the snowboard section of it, which plays out normally until he jumps onto the snowboard. And because he can't ride the snowboard, the camera just gets stuck. And I don't even know if I'm still in control of Big or not. I can't pause during this because it's technically still considered a cutscene. I can't pause during it, meaning I can't exit out of the level, so I actually had to reset the game. Like, the game isn't crashed. I can still switch characters. The time is stopped for some reason. I think that's still part of the cutscene. I think that's why. And you can see, like, the CP... Like, you can see that my partner is still moving. So the game hasn't crashed, but I can't really do anything, so I do have to reset the game myself. So I let the cutscene play out as normal, and then once I hit the ground with Sonic, I switched to Big. And again, I think that the avalanche has rubber banding, and something interesting that I found out is that the avalanche will never catch up to you. Like, I think I actually tried, like, going back and trying to let it hit me, and it never hurt me. And there's this one part that where on the snowboard you actually can jump off as Sonic, or you have to jump off as Sonic, and you don't even have to hit a button or anything, but with Big you actually do have to manually jump off in order to reach the other part of the stage, otherwise you will not reach it. And that actually gives us the chance to go back and actually see that the avalanche falls into that pit. So like we have like a snowfall right there, and it looks pretty cool. So you have to do the rest of the stage without a snowboard, so you are considerably slower, but the camera is really wonky, and everything's downhill, so that's a little faster. One of the cool things about this part is that I actually get to see the houses on the side of Ice Cap. That's really cool. I've always wanted to take a closer look at the people who live in Ice Cap Zone. It takes us a little longer than we would like to, but ultimately most of Ice Cap is possible. You know, again, barring moments here and there where you have to switch to other characters in order to do specific things, but other than that, not the worst, not the worst stage to endure, because there weren't a lot of things that were tantalizingly close. That was pleasant, to say the least. Now we have to go fight Knuckles, and like I said, the game has been crashing whenever I use the action button, and I don't know why that is. It's super annoying, but rest assured that these character fights are possible. I have the original footage where I did beat Knuckles with Big, but I was right up next to him, and I was hitting the action button, and I just was not hurting him, and I don't know why. Like, it was just impossible to do it without the game crashing, and I just figured, like, I'm not gonna do this. I have the original footage. I'll just show that it is possible to do with Big. I just can't do it right now because of the way the mods work, but it is possible. It's totally possible to do. So after this, we have another Chaos fight, which is Chaos 4, and honestly, it's pretty par for the course. You know, like, it's pretty much the same fight that we would have normally, except instead of, you know, homing attacking or, like, jumping on him, we just hit him with our lure. And again, it works here because I'm right up next to him, and I also think it's because it's a boss. I don't know why this compatibility is not good. But yeah, like, it works. It works just fine. I think it honestly would take the same amount of time to do with Sonic as it would Big. So it's not really a slower fight. It's just, you know, one that you have to have a little bit more patience on because Big can't jump as high as the other characters can. So it's more likely that you're gonna get hit, but otherwise it's completely possible. Next we have Sky Chase Act 1. There is nothing special about this. We're gonna be skipping both Sky Chase because, like, nothing changes. Even when I have Big selected as the model, it's like Sonic, Tails, and the Tornado are its own model, meaning that I can't change Sonic for Big because Sonic is a part of this other model. So these are really standard, and there's nothing different about them. After that is when we meet up with Amy, and unfortunately we couldn't really sequence break here, so we do have to do Twinkle Park again. But something interesting and something that maybe people don't know is that, like, when you do beat a stage with a character and you go back to that stage, you have to do the next mission. So because I already completed Twinkle Park and it's a mission, I actually have to do the B mission now, which is collect 50 rings and get to the end. And one of the interesting things that you'll note that I didn't really know about this was I didn't want to struggle with getting a car again. So I just did that with Sonic, and I figured, you know, I'll just switch to Big, like, once I'm on the road. Switching to Big mid-kart race blows up your car, and I don't know why. So that's really weird. Being Big actually makes the like, getting a bunch of rings through the bowling section, that makes it really easy. So suffice to say that this mission is really easy to do as Big. And it also helps that most of the stage is possible with him. So the key card that spawns to get you into Speed Highway doesn't spawn with Big, as a lot of things have not been spawning, so you do have to switch to Sonic and pick that up and take it to the door, otherwise it's not gonna work. But after that, we enter Speed Highway, and I am positive that this is not gonna work because it's Speed Highway, and, like, Big is the opposite of Speed. But you can get through most of the first part just fine. Fortunately, you can jump just high enough above the ramp in order to clear that and jump onto the next platform. The loops are automated. There are a lot of automated parts here, but they just make you go faster. The spring lets you get on top of this little platform here where you can reach this other platform where There's a separation. You can take the bottom path or you can take the high path. Of course, Big can't just run on the wall for too long, so we have to take the bottom path for it. It's a slog, you know, like it really is not speed highway when you're using Big, if you catch my drift. It's definitely annoying to go through a lot of lengthy sections that would take like 2 seconds to do with Sonic. It takes like a minute to do them with Big. And then you reach these like construction things, I'm not really sure what they are, and a set of dash panels, which, as you know, stop our momentum. But if we jump on them at just the right angle, or just at the right position, kind of how we were doing with the Orca part in Emerald Coast, we have just enough speed, but we also have to jump at the right time too, and that conserves enough momentum for Big to clear that part. We just rinse and repeat for everything we find. And I was positive that only Sonic would be able to take the helicopter, and I was sorely mistaken. Big can take the helicopter, and I'm pretty sure that means any character can take the helicopter. That was insane for me to find out the first time. Big can take the rocket, no problem, as we said before. Here, something weird happened. Fortunately, I had a checkpoint right before it, but I fell through the stage for some reason. I guess because I at it at the wrong angle. I don't know why, but you know, you can still clear it. You know, it was just a fluke of the moment. Again, you have to jump over this little ramp that goes up in order to clear it. We've learned a lot about this through Emerald Coast, which is ironic. A lot about how these stages work. But again, you take the rocket, you take it up, and then going down happens. Big doesn't really run down the building so much as he falls, which I guess is still what we need to do. The camera freaks out for a little bit, but you know, he can make it down, and now we're going into Dawn, and yeah, it's possible. Like, you don't really need to do any platforming during this section. You can just go about your way, avoiding the cars and avoiding any badniks that come your way. And then you reach the ending part, which at the beginning I thought like, oh, you can't use the fountain to get to the top because Big can't jump that high. Well, the fountain acts as a spring, so if I hold back, he actually gets launched far enough, meaning that Speed Highway is 100%, I never have to change any characters, possible with Big the Cat. And I'm at a loss for words. To this day, I can't believe that's possible. Like, I did it in my original recording of this, and I was gobsmacked. Like, I couldn't believe that I did that with Big. And even now that I'm watching the footage back, I'm just like, how? How did I do that? How is it possible? And during my original recording, I actually couldn't reach that last platform with the fountain, but there are some springs to the side, which, if you take them, you can reach the side of the platform perfectly. So you have options in this stage too, which is insane. So you head on over to Angel Island, and you get the Ancient Light with Sonic, which, by the way, you can get as Big. It's a little bit of a trek because like he doesn't jump far enough or he doesn't jump high enough in order to reach it. But if you got it at just the right angle, he can step right onto that little ledge and get the Ancient Light. So that's pretty cool. But unfortunately, no matter what you do, you can't kill this Kiki, so you do have to do that with Sonic. Little inconvenient, but not the biggest deal, I guess. And now we head into Red Mountain, which is another, like, super, super interesting stage. It's not possible to do with Big 100%, but I'd say, like, 90% of it is possible with Big. It's just a bunch of platforming, it's taking rockets, there aren't a whole lot of springs, and the only ones that you have to use are the ones that you need to do with Sonic, but other than that, like, you don't have to take springs in order to complete this level, so that's interesting. But yeah, it's like a really cool, slow-paced level if you want it to be, because Big can take zip lines as well, no problem, that's totally not an issue for him. The platforms are just high enough for him to be able to reach, for the most part, and that's just during the first, like, half of the stage, because then we reach the second half, and it almost feels like this was a stage Big should have been in if he had been a platformer instead of a fishing minigame. It's all about being careful. But before we get to the second half of this stage, there's a part where you have to get launched by a set of springs, and normally that's what you would do. You would normally get launched by those springs and reach the other side. But fortunately, we can skip that part because if we go to the left, we can just drop down to the next part of the stage, and Big can just go around this pool of lava like it's nothing. That's so interesting to me, because like normally you would think like, oh well, he doesn't have enough momentum. It's like he doesn't need the momentum. He can just stand there and like he won't slide off. That leads us to the second half of Red Mountain, which is like the underground part. And again, like Big can just mostly go through this. And this is where it definitely becomes more of a platformer for Big, because there's a lot of jumping you need to do, and there are a lot of times where you're just gonna have to take a hit in the lava, just because like Big can't jump as far as other characters can. But you know, that still makes it possible. Like, you can still take the hit and go about it. But like, I think I only needed to change to Sonic probably like twice during this whole stage. So like, it's crazy that it's almost possible. One part that is like really frustrating to me, it's really frustrating to me that you can't do this, is a part right near the end of the lava section of Red Mountain, where you have a set of dash panels and a ramp, and this one you can jump over, but it won't be enough to get you to the next platform, and you can take the hit, but Big is not fast enough to get there before he dies, so you will constantly die and die and die during this part of the level, meaning I do have to unfortunately switch to another character. Maybe if I'm fast enough, I could do this. Again, if you figure out a way to do this, I'd love to know, because I'm pretty sure Big's not fast enough to reach it, but maybe if you somehow found a way to be fast enough, you could reach that part without dying. But after that, it's pretty straightforward. No real issues, not a whole lot of obstacles. You can just go about your way. Also, Big falls like a rock whenever he takes a rocket, so it's really funny to just see him go super high and then just fall down. Almost like the first Mega Man game. But then we have Sky Chase Act 2. Again, nothing special about that. Now we make our way to the Sky Deck, and yeah, this level is, I'm gonna be straightforward, this level is like half impossible with Big, because only Sonic and Tails, as far as I know, can grab onto like these little pillars over here that you need to do in order to proceed to the first half of the level. Big just straight up can't do it, and there are a lot of those parts where you need to do that. Like, there's not a whole lot to really explain here. You'll mostly only be switching to Big when there's a straight path that you can walk on, but other than that, you kind of need to be Sonic for this stage, because like even Amy and Knuckles can't do this. Again, Tails would be able to. In fact, I feel like Tails would probably have an easier time with this stage, but Big is just hopeless for this part of the stage. Also, something else that's a little strange that I guess only Sonic and Tails can do, Big can't grab onto the monkey bars, meaning that he will fall to his death no matter what I do. And this is another jump that I feel like is possible if I just had enough momentum, if, you know, Big jumped far enough, because it looks like he can reach it, but I figured, like, I'm not gonna waste too much of my time with that. This part is weird. Big is, like, climbing the ladder backwards. I don't know what caused that. This part is definitely a tough one to do, because with Sonic you normally wouldn't really feel this, but like everything's shooting at you, the ship is falling apart. With Sonic you can blast through this no problem, but Big is a completely different story. When Big gets hit, he gets sent back far, there's wind in your way that'll send you back. I would never even bat an eye during this part of the stage with Sonic, but with Big it's just like, oh man, this part is like kind of scary. Because like if you get hit once, it's almost the end for you, because you're gonna get hit back, meaning you have to go back forward, and the turrets are gonna hit you again. And they are some of the most annoying things to deal with in this stage. This part, I remember not being able to do during my first time around. I felt like I had to switch to Sonic, but if you step on the exact platforms you need to, this is totally doable. You just have to be really, really careful during that part, but it's completely possible. This next part with the giant turret that you need to hit, definitely a lot more difficult to do with Big. It's still, like, there's nothing stopping you from doing it, but because Big is so slow, you're gonna get hit by a lot of the other blasters that are shooting at you, but with enough patience and perseverance, you can do it. And that leads us into, like, the final part of the stage, which is a little bit inclined, it's a little bit tilted, and you just gotta be careful with Big here, because it's still doable. Like, you can still get through all the same parts. You just gotta be careful with the enemies that hit you, getting things at the right time. And the one part that, again, because Big can't use the monkey bars on, the last part, basically where you have to use the springs and grab onto the monkey bars in order to be able to do it, you do have to switch to Sonic there. But other than that, like, this section was pretty much doable as Big. There are some issues here and there with the gravity being changed, and that's annoying, but it's not the biggest issue, I guess. You just have to land exactly where you need to land and hit the button and get froggy, pretty much. Like, it's annoying because most of it is not doable as Big, but the parts that are doable are kind of fun. And now we go to the Gamma fight, which, again, much like the Knuckles fight, It's doable. I did it in my original playthrough, but I can't do it this time around because the game crashes. Again, I don't know why, but it is doable. In fact, just to test it out, I did it with Amy, because Amy doesn't get to fight Gamma, but I did it with Amy, and she's able to do it no problem. So I don't know why Big specifically is the one that crashes the game when I use the action button, because I'm able to use it with Amy, I'm able to use it with Knuckles, Tails, no problem. And now we have our fight with Chaos 6, which is doable, but this time around, because the game was crashing when I hit the action button sometimes, it made it a lot more difficult and a lot more annoying. It was such a non-issue in my original playthrough, but this time around I had to be really careful when I hit the freeze eggs, when I hit Chaos once he was frozen, because like any wrong movement could cause the game to freeze. Like I had to hit every single thing at the exact correct position, and I had to take my time with it. After a while, I guess Chaos just doesn't start sucking things up anymore, so I had to throw it at the end, and that was really scary because I thought like it was gonna freeze again, and I just didn't want to, or it was gonna crash again, and I didn't want to have to do all that all over again. But through, again, a lot of patience, I was able to, you know, get through this fight no problem, I guess. Like entirely possible with Big is what I mean. Like it is entirely doable. It's just that this time around it was annoying. Then of course we have to head over to the Lost World segment of the Lost World level in Sonic. So I think only he and Knuckles go to Lost World. The first part seems really promising. You know, Big's going really fast. There's not a whole lot of things that you need to avoid. Things that would hit you as Big would hit you as Sonic anyway. So for the most part, that's fine. Until we get to this part that you would not think is an issue, because you would think that you'd be able to reach that part no problem with just a jump with Big. I guess you just can't, and I don't know why. I guess he just doesn't jump high enough, but it looks like it should be possible, and it's silly that it's not. One part that definitely shocked me, and I don't remember if I had to change characters during my original playthrough of this or not, but this time around I didn't. The snake part is 100% doable with Big, because it doesn't really require you to do anything too special. It just requires you to jump from platform to platform and raise the water levels. Every button is reachable as Big, because like the rock snake puts you right next to the buttons you need to press. You can jump over like gaps no problem. This one part I had to jump toward the side, otherwise I'd get hit by the spikes, but that wasn't too big of an issue either. So yeah, that's pretty cool that this part is just 100% doable. The next part with the mirrors and the reflection, I remember this part being way more annoying with Big during my last run through of this, but this time around I guess I kind of just brute forced it and I just went about it, and it was really no issue. I can jump to the platform no problem, avoid the enemies when I have to, take hits when I have to. The one part that unfortunately you can't do as any other character but Sonic is the part where you have to do the Lightspeed dash, but other than that, no problem really. This next part, you have to steer clear of the springs because Big unfortunately can't clear them all, so you have to use the platforms in the middle, which is cool that they give you an alternative, because normally that's just really easily possible with just Sonic, but you know, in case you somehow mess up, you have that platform in the middle, or those platforms in the middle to get you to the end. And then we have the giant cheese ball that chases you, the giant flame ball that chases you, and in my original playthrough, I remember that I was able to clear this no problem, and I mean, you can get through it with no real issue. In fact, it's much easier. I think the biggest problem with this is that you have the camera. The camera is always fighting against you because it's trying to show you the big flaming ball, and the ball is something else that rubber bands. So like when you see me try to do this with Sonic, it'll catch up with you and then like hit you. But then I switch to Big and it slows down. So it's like it's funny how some of the things in this game work. But I remember that I could use those springs to get to that other platform. Maybe not, and that's really annoying because it's like, otherwise, this part is entirely possible too. I hate that I have to switch to another character just to use those springs. But yeah, like, it's really not a big issue with Big. You just gotta be careful with the arrows that are being shot at you and just outrun the flaming ball, which is not hard to do, I guess. This is a really weird part, and I don't remember this happening in my original playthrough, but this is like one of the weird instances where a door won't open unless you're Sonic. Every other part and every other stage is doable just fine. I guess it's kind of like the roller coaster thing in Twinkle Park, where like I have to be Sonic in order for the thing to trigger, but I don't know why you'd have to do that. That's just weird. Then we reach to this part of the stage, this room where you get to move the panels so that you can walk on the walls. Big can't do that. He can walk on the walls, he just can't get stuck on them the same way that Knuckles and Sonic do. Because like when you approach the walls as Sonic and Knuckles, they latch onto those walls because that's what they're designed to do. And while you can walk on them when you switch to Big can't naturally just jump on them and get stuck on them. So that's unfortunate too. Another Lightspeed Dash section, and that's about all she wrote. It's kind of an annoying level because you have to keep switching back and forth constantly, and that's one of the ones where I'd say like it's equally half and half possible. You know, like half of it you can do as Big, and it's kind of impressive what you can do, and the other half is just like, okay, I really need this other character to be able to pass this part, and it's silly. But that of course leads us to our final Sonic level, which is Final Egg. As far as I can remember, it's not doable. Especially early on, there's like this almost 90-degree angle curve that you have to do that Big just can't go up, so it's ridiculous. And like that's mostly what this stage is. Like it's slopes that Big can't go up, and that's kind of the only thing that makes this otherwise impossible. Because everything else is kind of not an issue for Big. There's a part where there's these rotating platforms, and Big can't go up them because it's not fast enough. Again, it's just a slope. It's just a slope that Big really can't go up. And I just need to switch to Sonic for that one part. But this, for example, this platforming section right here, I was positive. I was like almost 100% sure. No, strike that. I was 100% sure I would not be able to do this with Big. Because his speed, his jump being gimped, there's no way I can do this. Well, lo and behold, much like Speed Highway, you can do it, no problem. Like, in fact, I feel like I did it faster with Big than I would have with Sonic. It's crazy. I feel like I took a shortcut somewhere in there that I never knew existed. You keep going through the level, you take the elevator down. So far, like, so good. Like, I've only had to switch to Sonic like twice, and that's only for like one part. And then something weird here, Big can jump on these things and make them explode. Big can't normally do that. If he jumps on something, they hurt him, but not like these little crab things, and that's really odd. Again, there's a part where I need to do a Lightspeed Dash with Sonic. That's pretty much impossible without anyone else. And that means I only have to switch to Sonic 3 times throughout Final Egg, which is really interesting. And that leads us to the fight with the Egg Viper. And this is the one boss I regrettably have to say, and it pains me to say it because it's the last boss in Sonic's story, that is impossible to do with Big. And the reason for it is because his lure, or his fishing rod, just doesn't reach Eggman where he is. It doesn't reach where he is normally, let alone when he like extends the tail for Sonic to do the homing attack on. So that's just something I straight up can't do with Big. But I figure, you know what would be really interesting? I can't do this as Big, but I wonder if I can do this as Amy. And I spent way too much time on this fight with Amy, to the point where it got annoying. I was so done with this boss fight. I heard, "Get a load of this," so many times. Like, it's already a meme because of how many times he says it during a normal fight, but because of how many times I tried to do this with Amy, because, okay, the thing is, you can actually do it. You can actually hit Eggman with Amy's hammer, and she'll, like, go back. And then when he extends the tail, you just have to hit the little green dots perfectly with the hammer, because she like does a flip in the air after she hits something. When you jump as Amy and you use the hammer in the air, Amy will do a flip, propelling her forward, so that makes it so you can hit the other green dots, but it's so easy to miss them. 95% of my deaths came from me missing the green dots, but it's entirely doable as Amy. It just takes longer, because with the homing attack you can do it really quickly. And then comes the spinning top part, which Amy's slow, like I said, she's not as slow as Big, but she's definitely slower than Sonic, so she has to pick up momentum, and she doesn't jump as high as Sonic either. So she can't get onto the spinning tops naturally. So what I had to do was I had to jump in the air, use the hammer in order to build up my momentum, so Amy pulls her hammer out and starts running. When you do that, if you hit the action button and use the hammer, she'll hit the ground and do a flip in the air, and that propels her pretty high, and I used that to get onto the spinning tops and then hit Eggman. Again, much like Speed Highway, I was shocked that this was possible, but the fact that it was possible meant that, like, I had to do it. So I got a little obsessed with it and did my best to actually prove that I can do this. This is possible. Funnily enough, when you do beat the boss, Amy says, "See, I knew I could do it," which made me laugh really hard because I was like, oh my god, yeah, Amy, I guess you're right. I guess you could do it. I knew you could. Okay, so this is post-Chari, and I didn't realize just how in over my head I was when I was recording this, so I am going to have to cut this video into 2 parts. No worries, Sonic's story is only half of what this game, and by extension this challenge, has to offer, so be sure to stick around for part 2. Until then, stay safe and stay awesome. This is Chari5, signing off.